Alright, doing some more assembly tonight on the 406 project. Did get the crankshaft in, got all of our bearing clearances checked. Showed a little bit of that on the last video. Just want to give you a quick update. We ended up being 2/1000ths on all the mains and then 2.5 on the rear main bearing. So that's perfect. A little bit on the tight side, but that'll be just perfect for this application. Next is going to be checking in-ring gap, but then also I'm going to explain that a little bit and go over kind of what I have and what the next step's going to be. You'll notice with most pistons, they'll come with a sheet of different applications and different in-ring gaps, depending on what your application is going to be. Now, I talked about it earlier with this build. I'm going to open them up a touch with future plans or down the road plans in mind. Basically, I'm planning, I know it's a possibility that we'll add some type of power adder later on, so I might as well open up the rings slightly now rather than not, and then that kind of limits what I can do later. So for me, I'd rather just open them up a little bit now, that I know I can always add boost or a little bit of nitrous later. Not going to have any issues with the rings butting. So with that being said, first step's going to be, I pulled out the top ring, first groove, have them laid out here. This is going to be the one I designate for cylinder 1. We're going to put it in cylinder 1. Now, I'll try to tip this up so I can show you guys how I do this. That should work. So what I'm going to do is grab cylinder 1 piston. I'm going to use that as a guide for putting the ring in. And also there's a dot. This dot faces upwards. Different rings have different indications on what's up, but it does matter. So I'm going to go ahead and install this ring carefully. You don't want to scratch the cylinder, nor do you want to roll the ring kind of twisted. So I'm going to use this piston to guide it down the bore about to the midway point. Why I'm using the piston is now I know that ring is in there flush and square. So the next step is going to be grabbing your feeler gauge and checking what the gap is. So I've actually checked this one already. This is 19/1000ths, and it is a little rusty, but I've actually already measured it with the calipers. It is really 19. You'll see our gap right over to this side. So we've got a nice tight 19/1000ths. If you can see that, that's in between there. It's nice, a little snug but free. It's perfect 19/1000ths. Now, if this was just going to be for our original build, which is the 550 horsepower, 530 horsepower street engine pump gas deal, that's perfect. But with nitrous or a little bit of boost in mind, we're going to want to open it up a little bit. Now, these are just a rough idea, so this is a great reference, I'll put it that way. So if you look here, drag racer supercharged nitrous, 5/1000ths, and what that is 5/1000ths per inch. So this bore is a 4.155 bore, so you do 5/1000ths times 4.155, and you get just under 21/1000ths, about 21/1000ths. So that's what I'm going to open up these rings to, is 21/1000ths. I know with that ring gap, I'm going to be absolutely fine with a little bit of boost or a little bit of nitrous. Now, you'll also notice that it says up to, or actually we'll scroll over here for the bigger bore, 5 to 7/1000ths. So we could do this 7/1000ths per inch. That would be for more of higher boost levels, bigger nitrous shots, which we're not going to be doing. So that's why I'm keeping it on the smaller side of the nitrous or boost application. So the next step would be to grab our ring file and actually open up that ring gap. But I don't have the ring file on me today. I will have it tomorrow. So for now, that's about all we're going to do, is just check it. We know what it is. Yes, in fact, we are going to have to open up the ring gaps a little bit. That's going to be our next step. So I'll show you guys in a video how that procedure is done. It's something that takes quite a bit of time. Luckily, we're only taking off a couple thousandths on these, so that'll help it go a lot quicker. When you get a fit to file set of rings, it takes a little longer because you're normally starting with next to no ring gap. So luckily these are already at 19, so it's just a couple thousandths, and that'll speed up the process quite a bit. But for the Camaro, this engine combination here, that's normally on like 20 pounds of boost. We're gonna crank it up a little bit this year to like 25. The ring gaps were set accordingly on that because we know we're gonna be a little bit heavier boost. Off the top of my head, I wanna say it was roughly around 26 thousandths on that. And that's just a 4-inch bore on that. So gives you guys a little bit of a reference of what we do with ring gap and why we do it. Basically, the more heat you create in that cylinder, the more things are going to expand, and what will happen is it'll actually close that gap completely if you were to essentially create too much cylinder heat with too much nitrous or too much boost. When that ring gap closes completely, what it's going to do is what's called butt the rings, and they're going to be touching, and then it's going to want to fold upwards, and it's going to break that top ringland off. So some pretty serious damage can be had by not gapping your rings correctly, and I tend to always gap mine a little bit on the big side, just because what's going to happen if I have them gapped a couple thousandths big? Nothing. Literally nothing. At the finest level, you might use just a touch more oil, but almost every application, you're never going to notice a ring gap that's been opened up 2 or 3 thousandths more. So I like to keep it on the big side. I've never had a problem with that, and it's just kind of a safety factor. So that's the way I do them, and it's always been successful, so that's the way I'm going to keep it. Now, if it was just a naturally aspirated application, we're never going to change it, I'd leave the rings at 19, continue checking them as we assemble, and we'd just use it like that. But with knowing myself and knowing kind of future plans and how things go around here, I'm going to open them up just a touch, and that leaves our options open for different applications later. You just never know with me. I might put this engine in something completely different than what I'm thinking. So with that being said, I think that'll be it for tonight, and I hope this helps you guys. Thanks.